Welcome to another episode of the Pioneer Mind podcast. Really excited about this episode today. Again, I'm excited about all of them because I'm loving this whole process of kind of learning from other folks and having these discussions. The last one we did with Encore Energy is cotton on quite well with the investment and just learning about the oil field. And we're going to do a lot more of those. So I'm excited about that and kind of promoting my oil field connections that I have with my business and what I'm doing. But today we have a guest. He's pretty close to me in terms of not far. He's an apple not far from the tree. Dylan Workman is joining us today, and he's here today because he's right in the middle of this mess of being a pioneer. You know, I've talked quite a bit about being a pioneer and having a pioneer mindset, and I feel like it's something that's really been lost in the culture. We've actually just kind of stepped away from people just stepping out and taking risks like no tomorrow with no idea of the outcome and really what's going to happen. I think it's a real weakness in our culture. We're actually getting dumber by the day with AI and all the tools we have to us in terms of connectivity, productivity, whatever it is. It seems like we're going backwards, even though like technology says we're going forward. So it's kind of odd. So, and again, these innovators take something that already exists and make it better. They innovate. They take something they already know and make it better. And that's occurring in the culture quite a bit. But I would say as a pioneer mind, a person who breaks new ground, breaks barriers, goes into new areas and no one knows. And again, the pioneer person, from what I've read about pioneers, Dylan would maybe agree with this, is like, because I'm going to ask him some stuff about why he left Omaha and came back to Montana, but there's something in their knower. That's the only way I can say it. They just know that they're supposed to go do this thing. And again, everybody's telling them, you're crazy, you've got a good job where you're at, you're really secure. This is maybe your future to have security. And at least in my life, I've always rebelled against that. And I've been in rebellion. And I think there's a part of rebellion within being a pioneer mind thinker. The person who's just, no, I'm not going to do the herd thing. And I've used on here a couple times. I need to find a different quote, but it's one I'm just stuck on right now with C.S. Lewis. He basically says, when the crowd is all heading for the cliff, it is the man who is insane that's running the other direction. And I really believe that is something that's it's that big in the culture. The herd is going one way, and there's just very few people seeking out the new ground. And so, and the safe ground, maybe even. But, today we're going to interview Dylan. I think he's going to have some interesting insights. He's a very deep thinker and is not afraid to communicate exactly what he thinks. So there'll be no issues there. Just welcome Dylan to the podcast. I'm so glad you came. Again, I want to promote what you're doing. At the end of the day, as we do this podcast, I want people to know you better. I don't want any mysteries about what's driving you. You've got a beautiful family, beautiful wife, and kids. You got a lot going on, but you really stepped out in the last few years and left something secure in Omaha, Nebraska. Really, it was secure. I think they liked you there. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean the work liked me, but they laid me off.
Oh, they did lay you off?
Yeah. They laid off the lower 25 on the seniority list, and I was number 24.
Okay.
And so I was like, heck yeah, because I wanted to go back to Montana really bad. And the day I got a job here in Helena, we were living in some old lady's attic. She was really sweet. She actually gave us her upper room in her attic. And I got a job at Missouri River Contractors. And the day I got the job is the day they called me back. Hey, you want to come back? And I'm like, sorry, I'm already here.
Yeah. And I think typically those types of things with like with a company like Ash Grove, is those layoffs are usually temporary to make some sort of accounting change is all they're doing. They don't really care nothing about how many people they have. So anyway, it's interesting that you would step out at that time. But what I want to talk about a little bit is, we had quite a run in Fairfield, Montana. It is a place that I could never have imagined that I would have ended up there. We got there through kind of a tragedy with my brother-in-law, Rob, becoming sick. We moved over to kind of be in the area, be closer to family and, with the girls and Kelly and all that kind of stuff. But Fairfield really became our home. We thought we would just stay there as a family. I'm just talking as a dad. We thought we'd always stay for a few years and head back to the Bitterroot south of Missoula. That was kind of what we thought. We got married down in Darby and Sula. We just always thought that would be home, but it didn't work out that way. So we get over to Fairfield, and it's not the greatest place for an entrepreneur like me that thinks outside the borders, meaning worldwide, Japan, Russia, China, all the things that I'm thinking of. Why would I base myself in Fairfield, Montana? I had a trucking company. I've had some logging and sales across the country and all those kind of things. My story a little bit, but it's not the place that really made sense for me. I didn't own land. I didn't own a farm. I'm trying to start a business there that is really based out of everywhere else in the country, but Fairfield, Montana. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, so it's really difficult to understand those years, but at the same time, they were absolutely, uh, I consider some of the, I have just fond, warm memories of my time there,
Mhm.
and when we left, it was probably the right season to leave, but I still have very fond memories. And I'm so glad you guys grew up there, the log house, Piglet, the
Mhm.
pony, and,
Mhm.
all the things that we had available to us and the freedoms. And you guys are walking around with, fireworks and even guns, I think. I don't
Oh,
know.
yeah.
Swords.
Yeah,
Remember you
yeah.
had swords,
Yeah, yeah.
big, huge battle axe swords,
Yeah, I bought a Spartan replica sword, yeah, and killed fish with it.
So how does growing up in Fairfield, and I call it the last best childhood.
Mm.
People might disagree with me in Fairfield or whatever, whoever listens to this, but I don't care. My thinking as a dad, I always say to you guys, it really was the last best free childhood from my memory.
Yeah, I would agree with that, to some extent. I mean, everyone's childhood's different, but, like, I talk with some of my old classmates, people I went to high school with, and they all say the same thing. As we kinda joke, we're kind of the last ones out on the last chopper to Nam out of Nam, and really it was just a really un what made it really unique is that we were kind of free to do fun, dangerous things, like, really dangerous things, like, should have died a few times, and I guess that's what helped me.
So you're saying I was a terrible parent?
No, but no, I mean, we just did things. And kind of going along with the pioneer mindset, like I just got used to, there was a threshold of like caution that was raised for me. Like I know my limits. Okay. And so as kids, it was good to be tested in that regard, having physical pain, going through things like that. And I don't know. And like you learn caution, especially when things get really spooky. You know what I mean? You're like, okay, we're not doing that again. Right. But like, just a lot of my stories, I talked to my wife, Becky, about it, and she's just like sitting there in horror. Like, you did that? And it's like, oh yeah. And then she hears it confirmed later from someone else she doesn't know when we're at like a wedding or something like that. She's like, you actually did that?
Yeah,
Yeah, we
part
did
of it is
it.
just like you when you guys tell stories or we tell stories the way you grew up and everything, they don't hardly believe you, and it does take a third party confirmation
Right.
sometimes. Remember when we were down in that
Right.
irrigation box?
Yeah, that was dumb. Yeah, that was really dangerous. I remember. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah,
Yeah,
it was wild. And but the thing is, that's how you write a good story, though. If you want a decent story, everyone's like, if you want to play it safe, have a boring story. And like I look back at my life, and it's like I just have so much to tell. Like between the ages of 5 and 20, I mean, there's just so much stuff that we did that was just. I mean, I remember even flood irrigating, working for a farmer in Fairfield and then working for a ranch down in Augusta. The things I saw, the things I got to do, like no other person on the planet is doing this.
no,
I'm in one of the most beautiful places, unchecked, with a gun strapped to a four-wheeler. All I got to do is move water from one end of the field to the next. And I get to shoot gophers and all sorts of stuff. It's
you
like,
had grizzly bear experiences
right.
too.
Oh yeah, I got chased by a grizzly bear right behind the rodeo grounds in Augusta. But it's just like, if your life doesn't have some measure of danger in it, it's probably boring. Like obviously you should, don't be dumb, like don't put unnecessary risk on the table, but it's just like, go live your life. Yeah, I just my childhood, that was very developmental for me. Looking back, I just thought about it right when you were talking about it, but how that threshold of caution, I think that kids, everything is so bubble wrapped. All our kids are constantly safe. Everything is just constantly trying to avoid trauma, toxic relationships. And of course some of that is good, but you don't want to hurt your kids, but at the same point it's like, let your kids do dangerous things,
Yeah,
safely. You know what I mean? That's what
right.
Jordan Peterson said, let your kids do dangerous things safely. And I just think our whole childhood was that.
Yeah.
I mean, we did a lot of dangerous things. It's like, make sure you're wearing an inner tube when you jump in there, or it's just like, I don't know. It's like, we just had a lot of fun. And so I would say that element of danger was really good.
And I think another element for you guys' childhood is I certainly wasn't a micromanaging parent in some ways. Mom wasn't either. She totally let you do things that even I was like, what are you doing? But the thing of it is, there was this component of freedom in there, wasn't there? Like, I mean, when you think about it, a lack of control. There was me saying, no, I don't want to see that again.
Mhm.
Right. But at the same time, I think there was still, you knew you had freedom.
Right.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Is
I felt like the things that you were restricted were more character driven than they were circumstantial driven.
very much
You know
character
what I mean?
driven. Yeah.
Everyone's trying to control the circumstance so much of their kid, what's going on. And even as a new parent, to me, I find myself doing that, being a very big micro. Don't touch that. Don't, it's like be more restrictive when it comes to things that are going to be more developmental for your child's character. And so those are the things where I felt like, you're like, no, you're not going out. No, you're not doing that.
No, I was
And I
ver
remember that would make me really mad. But looking back, I remember Jake and I, my brother and I, when we were talking, I was like, we had really good parents, because I tell you, if they said yes to all the things that we wanted to do,
yeah.
like we'd be in big trouble.
Yeah, and I was very much into character, and maybe too much in some ways, because I just couldn't stand to be lied to or whatever. And I always knew the truth, and I'd stand there and just be staring at you while you guys fibbed, but I
Mm,
already knew what the story was.
mm,
One of my favorite stories about you is the you would come in, and this is not telling a negative. No one gives a crap anymore about any of this, so
mm.
you know
Yeah.
this. But you come in as a freshman, you'd been drinking or something like
Mhm.
that, and you start confessing to us as parents, and we're on this couch in the living room or what, some sort of chair, and mom and I are kind of half laughing. We're like,
Yeah.
because he's confessing to us about this, that he had broken the rules, and and you were really emotional about it.
Oh yeah.
If you
Oh,
remember,
I felt terrible. Yeah.
you were very emotional about it,
Yeah.
and we're kind of laughing in his face just to be truthful. And then finally, I think we got down to the point of, you were in football at the time, and I said, well, we got to go in the morning and take care of that. And you're like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, we got to go take care of that. We signed a little blue form, right?
Mhm.
And you're like, well, they don't know. And I said, well, we know. And you were like, you did.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we pull up in the morning, and what did I make you do?
Yeah. I think we went to Meyer's office first, and then we went to, I think we went to Mike Johnson as well, and a couple other people too I talked to and confessed that to. And
But you went in by yourself and took care of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
that was pretty hard, but
yeah.
it's better that than being known for being a liar. I mean, it all comes out, everyone, and I remember even one of our coaches who's like, hey, as a freshman, that showed a lot of character doing that.
No.
And because, it didn't just take me out, it took two other guys out as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that really hurt them as well.
And in some ways, I can feel bad about that, but I knew that we needed to do what was right for our family, and,
Right.
and I wasn't going to budge on that. And again, we were kind of laughing about it, because we don't necessarily truly, we don't care about drinking or alcohol. I mean, to us, it's a lemonade, it's an iced tea, it's a beer, it's a
Right.
beverage, right?
Right.
So we're not sitting there into some sort of abstinence thing, but we did sign the thing of a death sentence, that if you go do this, these are the rules you're playing under.
Right.
And that's what we were operating from. And again, you were funny as you confessed, but the thing of it is, I still say that was way better than you playing and getting away with it.
Oh yeah. No, it was a good thing that happened, and it was a wake up call. And I think it really, what made me feel bad is that I knew you guys already had a positive reputation in town, and I felt like maybe not.
We probably did. I don't know.
I don't know. But like I that's what I felt like, oh man, I just made my family look like total ding dongs.
Right.
And so that's where I felt. And then I also hurt the other two players as well. They got kicked off as well.
Right.
And so that kind of I mean, that caused a lot of hurt. You never just affect yourself, you affect
At the
yourself.
time, you think that's a big deal, but as time passes, you realize, man, that is super small.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter. But, character drives everything, So you go through this whole experience, and football was an amazing experience. School was. The teachers are amazing. I can remember when you were starting school, kindergarten in Fairfield, what was the teacher's name that came out and rode the bus with you because you were afraid to get on the bus?
I forgot her name.
So terrible. She would drive out to our house and get on the bus with you. I'm like, what in the world happens? What community does
Yeah.
this for
Yeah,
the kids?
no.
So again, you had the last best childhood, and but I do believe there was a lot of character development there that has carried you through even till now, in my opinion. So you go down to Omaha and you hook up. How'd you get that position down there? Is that through Jacob or was that through?
Well, so I moved down there because I was going to stay for 3 months with Jacob, and so I stayed for 3 months, turned into 3.5 years.
Right.
Because he's like, hey, I bought a house. I'm lonely. You want to move down here? Because there's no work here in Montana.
No,
I mean,
it was, yeah,
and I also had burned a bridge. So I graduated college at Montana Tech, went to work for a steel fabrication company, a big one, here in Great Falls. The pay was terrible. The work environment was terrible. The whole mindset was just awful. And I was like, 6 months in, I was like, I'm not working. It was like working with pirates. It
but
was
don't you
just
think that's a seed planted for I don't want to work for anybody?
right. Well, it was just so manipulative, the micromanaging and the manipulation, and also the constant fear of what everyone thinks. I mean, as a welder, that's the one thing that drives me nuts about welding is that there is an ego that comes with it. Same with knife making. There is an ego that comes with it, and you are terrified of being compared to. You're terrified of being critiqued. You know what I mean? There's
Your welds? Is that what you're talking about?
well, yeah. I mean, like, especially with social media and everything else, I mean, I mean, it's good to have critique. It's good to have, like, you want to get your skill better. You want to do a good job. Right. But a lot of the problem I mean, there's just an ego that comes with a skilled trade. And a lot of that isn't checked. I mean, have one really bad weld and look like a total idiot. You know what I mean? It happens
Interesting.
to everybody. I remember one of my supervisors where I worked here in Great Falls. You know, we had one guy, it was one guy, he had a hard time, one bad night. He usually welds pretty good.
Sure.
He had one bad night. So he had a lot of stuff that needed to be done. And he was ripped on left and right. And, to the point where he was about ready to quit right there.
Sure.
And he just said, and when our supervisor just said in one of our meetings, he's like, you're going to have a bad day too. And I hope it's just as bad as this guy's day.
Right.
And because
Have
it
a little
happened.
grace.
Well, yeah, you're not perfect. The machine setting might be off, or your positioning isn't right, or just whatever. Like it happens, right? And you want to get better, you want to improve. But when you're constantly crapping on someone in a skilled trade and everyone's whimpering and moaning, why doesn't anyone want to go into trades anymore? Have you ever worked in it? It's terrible. They treat you like garbage. I hate doing it. It drives
Right.
me crazy.
Right.
And so I mean, I had a pretty thick skin, so I'm used to it, and happen to be decent at what I do.
You probably saw my first telltale episode when I was telling on myself and I had 11 jobs in 1 year,
Mm.
and people don't believe that, but it's the truth. I had 11 W-2s, and it's because of this very thing you're talking about. I could not, for some reason, overcome, and you're probably built just like your dad. And I think Jacob is too, actually. We're just not going to tolerate a whole lot of, disrespect. Because and especially like if we're treated with respect, even if we're not getting paid well, I'm going for it. I'm gonna work my little butt off.
Right.
But disrespect is really a high, it's a seed planted in you
Right.
as you head to Omaha,
Mhm.
and you're learning things down there, for the whole journey of getting back to Montana. Don't you think that's true?
Yeah, and for even clarification, like I'm not a people pleaser in the sense of like I'm not after affirmation. Like people are like, oh, you need to make sure you're affirming your employees or whatever. Like I'm not asking for your affirmation. But respect is a completely different element because you got people
100%.
who want, well, he never said thank you. You're doing your job. He's paying you. Right.
Right.
You know what I mean? So just chill out. So there's people who quit because, they do have a thin skin and they feel like they're being disrespected. And it's like, you're just doing your job.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? But if there's a disrespect where you're belittled and you're treated like an idiot, right? So there's a difference between seeking approval, which I don't think is right,
No.
versus you should be seeking respect and demand respect in a way. And so unless you're disrespectful and you don't, I don't know. But
No,
uh,
exactly. But I think there's a dignity in work that is largely ignored. We don't like to even talk about it anymore, but there's a dignity that comes from really doing a job that you're exchanging money or some sort of level of income for a task that they want you to do. And that if you can do that to the best and fullest of your ability, there's a satisfaction in that can't be matched by anything else you do in life. I don't care what
well, just
men need that.
Well, just doing a good job. Like, and it means a lot to me. I mean, I've been hiding in here, but born with half an arm, one of the things is surprise, but like this has been a really driving factor because, especially growing up is like, I wanted to be seen as capable and competent. Those are the two things I wanted to be known as. And of course, wasn't initially very competent. I just tried being silly and funny
Right.
trying to be liked, and I would say dumb things, or whatever.
Woodpecker.
Right? I just tried being really weird, and again, that was seeking the approval. But it's like as I grew up, and especially in my faith, it just became far more apparent that I'm more than capable.
Yes.
I'm not disabled. When they fill out a form, it's like, do you have a disability? It's like, no. You know what I mean? And then I show up and they're like, so I mean, because I think that was a problem for people I signed resumes for or filled out applications because they're like,
Yeah, but to like even now, just thinking as we prepared for this podcast, that never your arm being developed the way it is, because I see you as whole,
right,
not less than, and it doesn't even cross my mind as something we should talk about.
right.
Is that tell you how goofy? I mean, and it probably does need to be talked about because you probably have had challenges because of the way that is.
I don't know. I actually say it's a strength. You and mom never making a big deal about it
We forget about it.
was like, and the thing is, even the kids I grew up with, I remember one of my classmates years ago, he had graduated high school and he was a couple years into college. And he's just like, Dylan, I still get guys that going like, you remember number 63, that one arm kid? And he's going, what one arm kid? And then I see you, I'm like, oh yeah. I mean, they all grew up with me. No one cares.
No.
And I think, every time you're going to have like this trauma talk of like, how you feeling today about your arm? I'm like, just stop talking about it. And I just looking back, I'm like, I guess.
Well, you developed a great sense of humor about it. Tell the story of us burning the ditch and the Mennonite guy coming from the Mennonite church. Tell that story. You're good at that one.
So of course you got to burn your ditches just so you get good water flow. And we're on, was it fifth lane?
Yeah.
Fifth lane there. And there's a Mennonite church just up the road from us and we're burning. And I'm wearing just this ratty, cut off t-shirt, hardly wearing anything. And I'm raking up about a couple hundred yards from dad.
Yeah, you're down the road.
And this guy passes me and he whips in right behind dad and dad stops raking and I look back and dad's having this conversation with this guy. I have no idea who this is.
Very nice gentleman.
Yeah. I have no idea who he is. So I'm like, whatever. So I finish up with what I'm doing. I start strolling back and I see the guy look back and he keeps doing this double take. And I'm like, okay. And so I get up to him and he immediately turns around. And he goes, what's wrong with your arm? What happened to your arm? And I said, my dad's a raging alcoholic. That's all I said. I just right off the top of my head.
That guy,
he's a raging alcoholic. And the guy just in sheer horror was like, you guys have a nice day, and drove off. And I was like, and that's how I've dealt with annoying people. And I don't know if he was annoying.
He wasn't. He was a nice man.
No, but that's just was like, I don't know why that came to my head because you're not an alcoholic. You don't even drink.
No.
So I'm like, I was like, might as well.
But you've done that. You've thrown me specifically under the bus for a long time.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
In the hot tub one time, we were in Wisconsin somewhere, and I'm in the pool, and I can hear you in the back in the hot tub with a bunch of kids, and you're telling everyone you're doing this, and you're showing how it's made out of rubber, and your dad tore it off and put a rubber one on.
Yeah,
remember that?
Yeah, you were like 10 feet away, your back's just above the
and you're like,
rim of
yeah, my dad tore it off. I'm like, Dylan.
Yeah,
remember that?
Yeah.
So you get to Omaha. And I think you were at Ash Grove, and then were you at Ash Grove second? And you went?
No, that was third. My first job was I worked for Midwest Labs. I was sorting dirt for Midwest Labs, and I actually really liked that job. I didn't pay very well, but I liked it. It was actually kind of high stress a little bit because, so you're sorting soil samples from fields all across America. Right. So each bag logistically costs $400. So when you spilt a tray, logistically it was so you did not want to spill a tray, and so that was really cool, and that was a good organizational skills, things like that. And then I applied for a job at United Packaging.
That's an Ash Grove outfit.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. It's over in Fremont. Worked out there, had no idea what I was getting into. And I even tried like saying all the wrong things in the interview because I realized right off the bat, I'm like, this is not for me. They needed an electrician is what they needed. I am not an electrician. And also I don't know diagnostics. I don't know coding. I don't know any of that. And I was left with an office that had no computer and old receipts. That was it.
Right.
It was just a file cabinet. And so I was fixing, but I learned a lot about photo eyes, palletizers, belts, gearboxes, learned all of that. Ingersoll Rand.
So you were a plant maintenance?
Plant maintenance for the entire plant.
Gotcha.
And so for a guy who's like still fresh out of college, really, and only has some fabrication and welding experience, I'm a full-on maintenance guy. And the guy was like, you'll do great. You'll do fine. You'll do great. And my first day there, Sid, he was retiring. He goes, you have 8 days with me. You need 2 years. And I was like, and he once he left, he's like, good luck.
Yeah.
And there was a few times where it was so stressful, the plant was shut down because I couldn't figure out a bagger. It was an IO card or something that wasn't reading right in the bagger. And so I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I'm trying to call Sid, but Sid's out fishing, So I mean, like, what do I do? And so the whole plant's down because there's nothing being bagged. So nothing's operating.
Right.
And so it
So
was
production's down.
right. Yes. Because of me. And this was like 2 months in. You know what I mean? No training. So it was 8, and that was the other thing. So I was there for only 10 months and it was like the most stressed 10 months. I think I told you on the phone, you called me. I was in the office just surrounded with paper. There's all these receipts. I'm trying to find out, when did he order from Motion Industries this belt or that? And I think I told you and dad, and you were like, so how you liking your job? And I said, like, I'm essentially a monkey with a handgun. That's all I am. Just running around. It was just the worst experience. But I learned a ton. Like the wealth of knowledge I got there it just set me up really well when I transitioned over to Ash Grove Cement. It was a transfer, so to speak. So I transferred over and I started out in the yard maintenance there and then bidded onto a welding night shift job. So
Nice. Yeah. But you learned a lot at those places.
yeah, what I loved about Ash Grove is the training.
Yeah.
You learn everything. I mean, like, especially what I like about it is that you start out in the yard. You don't start out in what you want. I wanted to be a welder. Well, they start you out in the yard. So you learn, how to unload rail cars. You're driving loaders, big loaders too. I mean, you're doing a lot. So you just kind of get well versed in the whole plant once you kind of get to know it. And then when you actually get into the position that you either, obviously sometimes you don't even have a choice because if someone's senior leaves, everyone gets bumped.
I gotcha.
You know what I mean? So if you
Yeah.
were
And that system is difficult to work in union. You union?
very union,
Yeah.
yeah, very
It
union.
just, I don't know how. I mean, I still don't know how you did it, actually, in my opinion. But anyway, so you go from there and then you meet this gal, you are going to move back to Montana and you're leaving a pretty good job, right? But you said you're laid off, but I
Well,
know
there was no guarantee of coming back. I mean, because they had mothballed the quarry, they had they had closed it. They had turned off both kilns, like they were because when COVID hit, I mean, because
but they loved you, didn't they?
yeah, but again, as a corporate entity, CRH made of 80,000 employees.
They don't care nothing about you.
No,
It's like,
they don't. They believe in no debt, which is fine. But like, they would rather get rid of, and I was fine with that. I was itching to come home. Omaha would just rub me wrong. And again, it's not even that the city was bad or this, that, and the other. It's just not the culture that I wanted to be in.
right.
And so I wanted to be back home. I just had this really strong love. But I also had to be there for a time because Montana was an idol for me
Sure.
and kind of had this arrogant assumption that, oh, yeah, everyone's better in Montana. No, everyone's just as messed up everywhere else. We're just our own flavor of that. We're
Right.
our own flavor of messed up. And so I had to get checked a little bit. And I think Omaha was a humbling there in that regard. There's a lot I learned in Omaha about myself. A lot of things I didn't like, tried burying. But meeting Becky, my wife there, and just an amazing gal. And then the work experiences I had really set me up from where I'm at today.
They did.
With what I know. Essentially, I really honestly probably I would consider all the work experience I've had so far as university. I mean, it was just like really intense, university. And so when they laid me off and I was like, sweet, I get to go back home. It wasn't just automatic. I didn't just like, oh yeah, let's just move back. We kind of had, we prayed through it. We talked through it. Like, cause I asked her before we even got married, I said, I was like our third date, I've never been on a third date.
Did you ask her?
Yeah.
Or tell her?
I asked her.
Okay.
So I told her actually. I didn't ask her. So cause I've never been on a third date before.
Right.
Never been on a third date. I'm not for everyone.
Are you intense?
Oh yeah, very intense. I'm not for everyone, and I get it. And and I totally understand. But by date 3, this gal is still wanting to go out with me.
Yeah.
And I just said, just so you know, I'm definitely planning on moving back to Montana because she's from Kansas City.
Right.
And so Kansas City gal, Montana boy. Do you want to go? Because it's 2 very different cultures. You know what I mean? And I definitely don't want to try to manipulate someone. Like I want you on the same page. And that was the thing that her and I both, that was what I was looking for. Is a lot of these gals were like, no, I just kind of want to stay in my suburb or whatever. And that's fine if you want to do that. It's fine. But, I want to be back home. And so I just threw that out there. I said, what are you thinking on that? She goes, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, all right.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. So,
And I have grace for Becky too, and not to talk about that very much, but just to mention that I always feel like Montanans don't leave Montana well.
No.
They any of them, almost all of them, they get off and they're like, "What did I do?" And they
Mhm.
wanna go home. It's very common, right?
Mhm.
And so a lot of Montanans don't leave well, and I think it's any and that's probably everywhere, meaning what you're used to, what you grew up with, the ice cream shop on the corner, the
It's
church, all those things are real, and then when you're leaving that behind and going to do something completely new, it's not easy.
Well, I think the element that bothered me was that everything is domesticated elsewhere. Everything, like, there's just nothing wild.
Yeah,
Everything is, manufactured wild.
yeah,
You know, every park you go to, everything, it's just like that's what I liked is just like I actually seeing something as it is.
yeah,
It has not been manicured, it has not been sprayed, cut, trim. It's just like in Montana is really just wild. It
right.
really is wild. It's starting to become more commercialized and everything else, but
I always think of the some of our family members have said they've visited with us and we're out on a trail. I can think of the trail. I can't remember the name of it, but we're out hiking and they're like, and there's cliff sides down to the river bottom and it's pretty steep, dangerously deep, steep. And they said there's no signs. Why is there not a sign there warning you to not go to the edge? They can't believe it.
right.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Montana just doesn't even think that way.
Well, even like when I went up to Arches National Park in Utah, that was the same thing. It'd be a 2,000-foot drop and you got 4-year-olds running around. It's kind of the same thing. Any of these like outdoorsy places with a lot of natural beauty and grandeur, there's a wildness about it. And I would say that was a part that, I just felt like everything, even the noise, I realized like I was very noise sensitive in Omaha. I come out, there's just always this hum. I didn't like it. And even today, I was working out in Fairfield today. It's 5 o'clock in the morning and at the gas station there at Mountain View Co-op, not a sound.
Right.
I mean, literally not a sound. It just and I remember we had people come out and stay at our house a couple times, and they would say, "It's so quiet." Like,
Right.
"Is there no one driving by?" It's like,
Right.
"Well, no, it's 9 o'clock at night,"
Right.
Like, so it's just that's the one part I would
So
say.
you're in Omaha and so in my opinion, kind of get closer to the
Mm.
mic a little bit
Oh,
because
sorry.
it's okay. And talking about this idea of just, I mean, you really kind of took it on the chin the last few years because of what you've chosen to do.
Yeah.
Becky's been with you right there.
Oh, yeah.
There's no complaints.
None.
Obviously, as watching you guys and what you're doing and what you're trying to build. But I do feel a momentum building behind you. But the initial time you get to Helena, a starter home is 650K,
Right.
right? And you chose Helena, which you and I have talked about that. I'm like, why would you Helena? But
Mhm.
it's okay. You,
Mhm.
you, you love your church. You're making a community there. You're making a life there.
It's actually a great town for kids. It's a
Right,
great town for families. I
right.
would say it's very good that way.
So
We
you're
like it.
exactly. So you found your place, and I'm happy about that. But talk about some of the struggles you've had in developing a fabrication business. I always say it takes 3 to 5 years to start anything, and you got to get introduced to people that are in the know or in the club in Helena. Whether you believe it or not, there's a club that you got to get in on the inside of as a business, and once you're in, you kind of
Yeah.
you get work.
Yeah, and that's kind of what's happening
And they
now.
gotta kinda like you, right?
Yeah.
So you get in on the club of a town. Every
Mhm.
town has its own little character, just like Fairfield did. We had a set of rules on how to operate in
Right,
Fairfield.
right.
What was number 3?
Don't state the obvious, I
Never
suppose.
state the obvious,
Yeah, right.
And so, you just kinda keep your mouth shut. But Helena has rules, but, early on, some of your early challenges, I know you and I have talked about it endlessly. It just you just beat yourself up. I think in just speaking truthfully, hard on yourself. And I'm like, hey, don't quit because everybody quits. Winning is not quitting because
Mhm.
everybody quits. I believe everybody quits. Very few
Right.
people go the absolute full length time to
Mhm.
find out if that's going to work or not. Right.
Right.
So talk about your first year.
First year, honeymoon phase, everything was kind of, I'm just going to keep it really simple. But I will say, did not know very much about finances, didn't know anything about pricing, didn't know anything about that. And so it was really foolish. Spent money on things I didn't initially need, and then, of course, didn't know how to charge for them, didn't
Sure.
know anything about overhead,
Sure.
didn't know I mean, this is how dumb, I didn't know the difference between revenue and profit.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we brought in quite a bit. Why do we only have this much? You know, like you're not, I didn't know any of that. You know,
Right.
now I have Excel spreadsheets, you know, but before it was just kind of all guesswork. And so really ignorant of the finances was one. Um, the marketing side, I feel like I did okay on, you know, because I wanted to be more in person. You know, I didn't want to, you know, spend on Facebook or Instagram ads and stuff. And I had to in some cases, but that didn't really pan out either doing that
What's been your best marketing?
in person
In person.
in
Yep.
person,
Yep.
in person and referral. But that took time
You-
because, and I remember a lot of guys who started businesses in Helena said the same thing. They said their first 4 years were absolute heck there,
Yeah.
just because it was like, but once you get into the business click there,
It's,
everyone knows you
it's real.
and you actually are reliable and you're not terrible at your job.
You
Now, if you're terrible at your job, you're over.
tell the truth.
Right.
Tell the truth.
Even if it
Right.
hurts. Yeah.
Yep.
And so you just people get used to you, they get to know you, they get to trust you. And then and now I'm starting to get this momentum, but and that's on the welding side, the fabrication side. I will say initially, one of the other things realizing too is when I jumped into this business, I didn't really look at the market well enough. Like, is this cause I'm trying to be a welder in general. Okay. But if you're going to be in Helena or in Montana, you need to be a very specialized niche in what you do. If you want to try to be a mom and pop store fixing lawnmowers or whatever else, good luck. You know, I didn't really have a specific niche. I'm good at what I do and I'm good at a lot of different things. So I'm just like, might as well capitalize on all of that. You kind of got to be a bit more specific. Who are you going to serve? You know, because there were jobs that I would do that would make me no money. I'm like, but they're wasting. So this is a waste of my time.
Sure.
So it was really just finding out that a lot of what I was doing was a waste of time. You know, I'm like, okay, that's not a good job to pick. You know what I mean? So then what's left? So you just been rifling down through all of these bad options till you finally get to this is actually helpful because because businesses should help the community. Like you should actually offer a service and get paid for it.
That's exactly right.
And so if you're of no help, that's what I had to realize about knives too. That was another mental challenge. It's just like you're making fancy men's jewelry. You know, check the ego. You're not making something that's absolutely needed. There are people who like, oh, I need a handcrafted knife. No, you don't. And this probably sounds like a terrible marketing for anyone who's making knives out there, but just check your ego at the door.
You're really making things for people that have a hobby or an interest,
right.
not a need.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah. So it doesn't fulfill a need, and you got to realize it's not recession proof. When money dries up, unless there's unless you're really well known in that top 1% that really want what, you know, they want handcraft, you know, and I would say the knives or any type of making or art, that's needed because we need people working with their hands. There's a lot of creativity in that. There's a lot I learned from that because there's a lot I learned from knives that goes into welding as well.
Well, to talk about that, it's one of my things that I have in my list about the pioneer person is they have a sense of creativity. They're creating new things. And I always say on this podcast that the pioneer is the start of every story. You know, they literally start. There's nothing that has occurred in our culture and even in history that someone didn't say, I can see a better way to do it. I can see we need to do this to whatever, right?
Yeah.
They start everything that's new that comes down the pipe. And what does that take? That takes creativity. And it's one of my complaints is like, we just can't even think anymore hardly. It seems like we're not producing that creative person.
Right.
I mean, you might disagree with that.
No, art has its place, right? But at the end of the day, you can't eat it. Okay. You know, I mean, if I'm going to ask, I mean, and I don't get angry at people anymore. I used to take it so personally when people are like, oh, that's expensive, I can't buy that. You know, I'd take that personally. It's like, but put yourself in their shoes. You know what I mean? If you're going to sell a $400 knife and, you know, and you know, you're like, I might as well spend that money on Costco. You know what I mean?
Well, those are economic realities in today's world with inflation and what's happened during COVID and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
Those are real things you're dealing with there. But the truth of it is that in art, like I always tell people when I tell them about your knives, I go, they're literally like pieces of art. They're not, you're afraid to use them. I've given them out to customers. I've told you this.
Mm-hmm.
And I have one in Dynamic Fluids, Justin Hunter. And he goes, I set it on my desk and I'm afraid to use it because it's so pretty, you know, and it's so beautiful. And it's substantial. Everything you make a very unique knife and it's very substantial. It's not sleek. It feels manly.
Right.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that's what frustrates me when I hear that. Cause it's like, I spent all this time learning metallurgy, reading books, making sure the heat treatment's right. They can pass a nail chop, antler chop, all this stuff. And then like, I don't even want to use it. I'm like,
Well,
dude, I designed it to be destroyed.
no, but it is that way. And I'm not saying you're a master or anything like
No,
that, but you've
no,
gone from, I remember making knives in Dylan's or Jacob's garage, and that garage has never been the same since, truly.
no,
But but
no.
to where you're at now, it's like I can't even think of a good analogy from where you started to where you're at now,
Mhm.
and how because you do care about it. Like
Oh,
you
yeah.
just mentioned, you checking the hardness. Was it a Rockwell tester?
Yeah.
You have a Rockwell tester. You have all these systems in place to produce a really high end quality product,
Mhm.
either whether it's Damascus or straight steel, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you do care about it, and sometimes like you'll get going talking about it, and you don't catch yourself. Am I right?
No, yeah,
And
yeah.
what happens to
And
you?
the other person's eyes glaze over.
Because
Yeah, it's like,
because 2
okay.
hours later, yeah, because you love it,
Mhm.
and it's creative, and I think there is something of value to be found in beautiful things being made.
Yeah, yeah, there's a value in it. It's just that's just the hard. You do have to understand the harsh reality. There's a lot of good artists out there who are not making money, and that's just kind of how that goes. But you also got to learn too, because here's the other frustrating thing too, especially in knife making, is that a lot of guys, I don't want to become a good snake oil salesman.
Yeah,
Like if you don't need it, I don't want you buying it. I
right.
don't want to pity buy. I don't want to. Again, I'm not. If this is really something you don't think you want or need, don't buy. And tell the truth even if it hurts, right? And
It's
again, it
absolutely
probably
true.
makes me awful. Don't take advice from me on marketing knives. Don't listen to someone else who's really good at it. I'm not it. So, but the thing is, every person who has bought a knife from me has bought multiple from me. You know what I mean? They're like one guy right now, he's bought 4 from me and he's going to buy another one.
Yeah.
He's just like, these are just unbelievable. And he says, I put them through the paces. They work great. And so that's what I like to hear. And one of the things I'm learning right now is learning how to do reviews better.
Right.
I don't have hardly any reviews.
Well, the danger that's occurring right in our culture is that we're through education process. The education changed in, I want to say the mid 30s to 40s, turned into functional training. We went to functional, where you're going to end up being trained to provide this skill in the culture, and that's what you're going to do the rest of your life. We've almost pulled creativity and critical thinking out simply because we want you to do a function. Our education system, the even parenting is turned into function. When you're a little kid, you're asked, "What do you want to do?" And a lot of times you're going to provide a function. I'm going to be a fireman, a boy might say. And again, it should be more than that, because if you're going to turn everything into pure utility, pure, I'm gonna buy that trailer because it can haul this much, and I could, everything's utility. Then there's no creativity, and again, it really makes a culture not so
And
good.
that's kind of the reason why I went into knife making, because I had a lot of people go, "Is that really what you want to do?" I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, it is." And really it's my rebellion against the decaying dullness of everything. Again, it's just like I want to be a maker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might be shorthanded, but I want to use my hands. I like
Yes.
making and like creating. And I also just don't like doing what everyone else is doing. And you've talked about that in your first podcast, is like, it might be a character flaw in me, in the sense of just like I really don't, like they're even in knife making or welding, there's certain things like, well, you can do what they're trying. I'm like, I don't want to do what they're doing. Like, and maybe it is a pride thing of just like, I want to stand out, I want to be different. I don't know, but it's just like, but that's where I struggle with, is like, I just don't want to do what everyone else is doing.
Well, I've
And maybe
told you
that's wrong.
how
I
I
don't know.
make decisions is, like if I see the herd going that direction, I literally look, there must be something over there that there, because I'm not a herd follower. I
Mhm.
never will be. And I'm difficult that way. I'm
Mm, right.
kindly difficult.
Right.
I always say that I'm kind about it, but nah, I'm not doing that. And I think you're built the same way. And I think at the end of the day, your knives, like I've had people be negative with me about you being a knife maker. I've had people say stuff to me like,
Right.
why don't you get a real job, or whatever,
Right. Right.
that
Right.
kind
Right.
of thing. And I'm like, nah, I think he's onto something here. And I think not only has it improved over the last 5 to 10 years, right?
Right.
You just see the quality going through the roof. And what has happened to the value of your knives over that period of time? Quadrupled.
Right.
Now you're selling things for quadruple or more,
Oh yeah.
even,
And also, you stick it out long enough, you're going to meet really good people. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I've met some really great customers, and I just got a phone call from a really good customer out of Kalispell. He called me and just said, "Hey, I have this guy that wants to buy, an X amount of knives every year from you so he can sell in his store, and it's not a consignment. You sell them at your price, and then, all that stuff." And so there's just a whole bunch of different connections that I'm getting all across the country, not just in Montana. And just getting to meet people, a lot of guys from California and Utah, and I think over in Florida, a lot of guys in Florida.
Yeah.
And so, no, it's really good.
So not quitting is winning.
Hmm.
And because everybody quits.
Right.
So you don't quit. You have no you where you've gone in 5 years, you don't know where you're going to be in the next 5.
Right.
And so you got this fabrication side, you're adding a plasma table, which is pretty powerful. My
Hmm.
goodness, the capabilities of them crazy things. So your shop is full of tools to do a myriad of things. From you work on cat case equipment, John Deere, buckets, right?
Yep.
All the things you do is also with the knives, right?
Yeah.
So
No, I wanted, when I started my business, I wanted a dual purpose of like, okay, we can make art, but I also want to help the world go around. That's kind of like my selling point, I guess, if I were to have like a catchphrase, like I want to make your world go around. You know what I mean? I want to be in and out of your life. You know what I mean? I can fix your equipment, do it quickly, do it correctly. And some jobs they're out of my capacity. I'm like, I can't, you know what I mean? I don't like
I
turning
don't
down.
have a crane.
Right, right. Well, I can't turn. I don't like. I hate to turn down work, but I also don't want to do. If it's going to take me longer because I don't have what I
The
need.
proper thing.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, this is not really fair to you for me to charge you for this. You know what I mean? So again, that's again telling the truth where it hurts. But yeah, and so I guess
So adding the plasma table, what's that gonna? I mean, I know quite a bit about them because I've been learning about them. But where's that going to take you?
anywhere. I mean, like again, that also can be on the art side as well. For, at least for the knife side, I was thinking about making just a bare bones skeleton handle, that can do a paracord wrap, and sell those for obviously a lot cheaper, so I can have a more,
Production
yeah,
oriented.
more production. I mean, there's still a lot of handwork, I got to bevel them and everything else, and heat treat them. But I want to pick a steel that's of higher quality. I mean, I'm picking really good steels where I'm working with now, but I would like to try to maybe move into the more stainless steels, to where you can get a cheaper item that's, you can punish a little bit more, and get kind of a better value out of that. And so that's one thing I'd like to be able to do, is just be able to pump out, say 80 knives out of one sheet or whatever. It depends on the size of what you're doing, but come up with a design that's unique. And skeleton handle, you can redo the paracord leather wrap on your own, and that's fairly common for a lot of those knives are out there. So I'd like to make something that's definitely unique. Now on the fabrication side, of course, we got parts, we got signage, we got all sorts of stuff that you can do there. And then also like bridge work, there's a lot of base plates, things like that.
Bridge plates.
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, like, I remember there was one bridge we were working on. There was just like all these little, again, you don't think it's that complicated. It's just a little 4x6 metal tab. Anyways, so, you don't think it's that complicated, but little 4x6 with 2 holes in it, now imagine having to make 500 of them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, okay, we're going to cut them out of a piece of flat bar and then drill all the holes when you could just, put a whole
Yeah.
sheet on there.
I'm going to stop that real quick and let's just go get that. So, Dylan, what would be the work that would be? I'm going to share your website here a second so people can figure out how to get a hold of you, phone numbers, go to your website for the knives and the fabrication. But maybe describe the work that, because you always say there's limitations. I don't have a crane. I don't have certain,
Yeah.
but you have this incredible knowledge base. I think you can do about just anything. Am I right?
Yeah.
So there's not a limitation on what you can do. It's just you don't have all the tools you need at this
Yeah.
point in your career.
Yeah, there's limitations in that regard.
So what's the work you would be most drawn to?
Repair, if there's equipment on site, that needs bucket repair. I've done a lot of buckets, done a lot of that, equipment repair. I would say repair. And even today, what I was doing was structural, a lot of structural welding, and that's what I have my certification is D1.1.
So here's the website. Why don't you talk about each one of those?
Yeah. So I got
the blades.
I got the blades, steel fabrication, mobile welding services, and then plasma CNC cutting, which is coming in May. So that's not there yet. And so when we get that going,
So steel fabrication entails taking what, half inch?
Anything, just anything. You're literally just taking metal and turning it into something. I always say fabricators are welders with, I
Okay,
mean, because anyone can weld a bead over and 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 over again. But if you can have the ability to think, create, measure, and make it accurate and fit and use the purpose and what it needs, as we can see there on the left, that was a hand railing job I did. I'm not really a huge fan of hand railing, except for jobs like that where that was a little bit more artistic. That was a hammered handrail.
gotcha.
And the customer was really adamant about it and really wanted it. And so there's that was a really good paying job.
Yeah.
That was also front and back.
So talk about the Damascus with the copper, and I believe you even do silver.
Yes.
Those are unique to anywhere I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Is that
No,
right?
yeah. Copper Mai is becoming fairly more common.
Okay.
There's Baker Forge. He does quite a bit of that. He's even sells it in blanks and it has crazy patterns, which is really cool. But the silver Damascus was a real trick. Not a lot of guys do it. I have to use my heat treat kiln to forge it just because my forge gets too hot and because silver melts at, I think, 1763. You can't forge at those temps. You actually forge at, I think I'm forging the billet at like 1725 max, but you also can't forge. There's a lot of high carbon steels you can't forge at such low temps like that, so I'm using ADC RB2 or I'm using ADC RB2. So I couldn't use, say, 52-100, which has to be, forging at a lot higher temps, so um so again, there's a lot of thought that goes into, like, if you're going to do a special metals forging, laminate steels that way, you got to really be careful what you're mixing and matching with. Not all steels are the same. So
So you got to do a lot of research.
yeah, initially, and now I just stick with ADCRB2 as the core steel, and then your Damascus billets on the outside that are also ADCRB2 and 15N20. So I forge those billets out to like anywhere between 200 to 300 layers, and then those become the jackets over the copper or silver.
And really, like, and here you can see in the website, give me a shout. There's a form there you can fill out. And do you your phone number on there too? Yeah, you got a phone number over here, the 3219
Yep.
406 590 3219. But you can call and just, if you have fabrication needs or anything like that, fill out the form or give them a call. Young man pioneering a new business, and we want to promote that. And and here, I think sharing his story today is pretty interesting in the sense of he's telling it's not been easy, but you are starting to see some momentum, right?
Yeah, yeah, nope, definitely seeing more momentum. And I was just thinking about it today. Actually, it was um, the best marketing is do a really good job for the right people. And I mean, there are good customers and there are bad customers, and you got to know how to sniff them out. And you want to be able to serve everyone, as best to your ability. And but I think it's really important to, again, I can list off like a handful of people that were the right customer, whether it be in knives or fabrication or repair or whatever it is. They were the ones that gained me connections everywhere else. You know what I
Sure.
mean? And they were the ones that, they actually paid right up front. You know what I mean? Actually paid me. You know what I mean? A lot of times I have to, it's like pulling teeth, so but again, just always do a really good job no matter what, even no matter who it is, even if the person's a pain or whatever, just do a really good job. You always want to cover your end, and so do a good job for the right person, and yeah,
That's good.
so
Well, just as a dad, just talking, truthfully, is that, I've watched you struggle, and I've not hidden the fact that there's times when I'm pretty, I wouldn't say saddened, but, or emotional, I guess, just frustrated as maybe you are with the journey you've been on the last few years.
mhm.
There's times when I'm talking to you that I can tell that you're really just getting your butt kicked.
Yeah, yeah,
And again, it's hard to hear that, but I also know, and I've told you this to your face, there's something in here that you're learning that you gotta go through, because if it was easy, everybody would do it, right?
right,
And there's something in there that you're learning that you can't even put words on it.
right,
I tell the story of me when I was working on what I was doing with the oil field from 2009 to 2012. I worked every day, probably 8 to 10 hours a day without an order.
mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
And,
that's what it's felt like for 3 years for me. Yeah, I mean,
but I always say to Kathy, because she didn't trust me necessarily with that because she wasn't sure what I was doing. But I told her, I know that I know. Well,
Mhm.
how do you know? What do you know that I'm not seeing?
Right.
And I'm like, I know that I'm on the right track. And there's something in us as men that needs for that to be a reality and be expressed. And I
Mhm.
feel like, in terms of people developing this pioneer mindset that we've been kind of chatted about a little bit, there's things a lot of men have stepped away from things that they knew they were supposed to do and didn't. And I
Mhm.
think there's a
I think there's a calling with it because there is, you got people jumping into stuff that they obviously are not ready for it or not built for it, and I've had these conversations with myself. It's like, are you built for business? You know what I mean?
sure.
Because there's, I mean, not everyone should be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I think it's actually really dangerous if you're not an entrepreneur and you're not in that mindset. You're just like, well, I just don't like being around people and I want to make my own hours. Well, good luck with that because your business deals with people and you have all the hours taken from you. You know what I
Right.
mean? So,
No, I hear you. And again, there's so much to learn. Even if I'm turned 60 and you're a reader, I know you're a reader. I believe in reading books. I try to read 50 or more a year on any subject I can find. We need to be lifelong learners about something, creating things. There's all kinds of things here to be talked about, but what you've done in the last 3 or 4 years, and it's been a struggle for your family. I know it has been. We've tried to be a help in the right way. We've talked about that
mhm.
openly, that there's times when helping can be hurting,
Right.
and then
Right.
sometimes not helping is hurting. And then sometimes not helping is helping.
Right.
I know I just said a mouthful, right?
Right.
Everyone's like listening to that
Mm,
going, what the heck he's talking
right.
about? But the truth of it is that sometimes not helping is helping. And it's sometimes hard as a family to sit there and watch that struggle occur. But I also know in my heart of hearts that it's necessary because you're learning something.
Mhm.
You probably can't even put it into words. Maybe 10 years from now, you're going to write it down like, oh, this is what it was.
Right.
This is what it was.
No, there's still a ton for me to learn. There's still a lot of things I'm not good at, and I remember I was, uh, uh, talking to my oldest boy the other day. He's really upset that he wasn't good at something initially. You know, and I was telling him, it's like, "Well, yeah, have you ever done it before?" "Oh." I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's why you're terrible at it." But the thing is, if you've never done a business before, it's adults need to remind themselves of this. We just give up so easily. "Well, I'm not good at it." Well, of course you're not good at it. Learn. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so that's what's kept me going is like I have the capacity to learn, pick up a book, find something, ask questions. There's a lot of information that's garbage. There's a lot of information that's great. Learn to sift through it. And that's what's kept me going is that I do have the capacity to learn. So I'm going to keep learning because I'm not going to quit.
But this podcast, as we close, is a perfect example. I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm making it up on the fly. I'm having a ball. I'm going to tell you that right now. But again, this is totally new and I'm enjoying it. I got great interviews set up with politicians and leaders in industry, oil field. All this it's all in the schedule. And I'm just going to keep pumping these out. And Dylan's one I wanted to do because he's my family, but also he's on the front lines of doing something. And again, I always say to him, you're in your second year. The set 2 years.
It'll be 3 years in March.
So 3 years right now.
Yeah, March 16th is when I quit my job.
Okay. So I said it, I used to tell him you're 1 year into a 3 to 5 year process. And he's now in his third year of a 5 year process. But you are seeing momentum.
Oh yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so
No. So
okay. Hey, well, thanks for joining us. It was great. I hope this encourages you guys out there. Get creative. Don't be afraid and don't quit. So hang in there and we'll get this out there and hopefully encourages people. Thanks for joining us.